Settle down, brother. This is the Quarter Report powered by enca.com. South Africa is a movie. Welcome to the watch party. Julius Malema has been convicted of a crime that carries a mandatory minimum jail sentence of 15 years, but he may actually not end up in jail. We're going to talk about a case involving an incident that is 7 years old now, but may fundamentally change the future of not only one of South Africa's most powerful politicians and influential ones, but also one of South Africa's biggest political parties, accounting for nearly 1 in 10 of all votes cast by South Africans in the last national election. Also, in the last 24 hours, a massive raid of 26 properties across Cape Town was conducted by various law enforcement officials over the alleged tender fraud of city tenders to the value of 1.6 billion rand in a moment where DA have been championing their clean governance track record, particularly in their holy grail, the mother city. Also, last night in a parking lot of a hospital, the prime suspect in the murder of the Murray father and son liquidators who were assassinated a while ago, the prime suspect in that murder was himself assassinated in a hail of bullets in that parking lot. And so we're going to talk about all those 3 stories today, amongst others, because they all really matter, even as the Madlanga Commission takes a break until the 13th of October. As always, the only place to watch the full show is on enca.com. Click on the link in the description if you're watching on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, also give us a like and a subscribe, please. It would be lovely if you did so. And of course, if you'd like to buy some merchandise, that's the other link in the description at 3beaniesnetwork.com. We've got all kinds of cool merch, and we've got more merch coming out soon. So in 2018, the EFF had a birthday bash, and you've probably seen the video, but at that birthday bash, Julius Malema was celebrating on stage, and he took a semi-automatic rifle and he fired many bullets into the air. And yesterday, he was convicted of actually quite a few crimes because of that action. So I'm going to tell you exactly what he was convicted of, and then we're going to talk about this more broadly, including the fact that his co-accused and former bodyguard, R1.6B Snyman, was actually acquitted of those charges. So the East London Regional Court, this is according to the reporting of Sitandiwe Velapi, the East London Regional Court found Malema guilty of the unlawful possession of a firearm and ammunition, discharging a firearm in a public place, failure to take reasonable precautions to avoid danger to persons or property, and reckless endangerment. His co-accused and former bodyguard R1.6B Snyman was acquitted of 2 charges: failure to take reasonable precautions to avoid danger to persons or property, and providing a firearm to a person not allowed to possess it. So since that ruling yesterday around midday, you have probably heard a lot of discourse and chatter around this case. Many EFF supporters are turning Malema into some kind of martyr and revolutionary hero who's going to jail as an honorable thing. Malema did immediately go on stage after being convicted and sing Dibulubunu, Kill the Boer, and say that he'd be willing to go to jail for the revolution. You would also have seen a lot of EFF supporters say that this is some kind of racist stitch-up because the case was initially put forward by AfriForum. It's an Afrikaans white judge who did this ruling, and the fact that R1.6B Snyman, the bodyguard, is white and was acquitted of 2 charges. So you would have heard all of that chatter. But at core, the deep discussion here is about, I think, 2 things. One, Julius Malema absolutely committed all those crimes. He absolutely did. And more than just the viral video that a lot of us have seen, if you actually went and looked into the reporting, that video was not deemed to be reliable enough evidence. It was actually video from the events management company Gearhouse, who was running the event. They had footage of that, which proved it beyond reasonable doubt. Right? The second thing is that Magistrate Toinette Olivier criticized Malema for evading questions during the trial and seemingly not taking it seriously. So a direct quote from Olivier is, many questions that warranted a reply were not answered. He told the court he could not count the shots fired because he had graduated from woodwork. These types of answers did not do the accused any favors. Now, I don't think she's saying there that she didn't like his attitude and therefore she punished him more or found him guilty of something that he hadn't done. I think she was saying that he didn't mount a particularly good defense for himself in what he was saying. Some of the defenses that Malema had was that he fired blanks and that it was a toy gun, but the evidence very clearly shows that it was a semi-automatic rifle and he really did fire those bullets in rapid succession on stage in 2018. So now some critics will say, but it happened so long ago and they're just trying to take him out and all of that. And even if you believe all of those conspiracy theories, the problem that people trying to defend Malema have is he did absolutely break the law. Like, he did absolutely break all of those laws. It's not even vague or like controversial. Like, even if you believe that this was a racist agenda from an Afrikaans white judge, and it was racist, and you can see that it was racist because Adrian Snyman was not convicted of anything. Essentially, the argument there was that there was insufficient evidence to conclusively, beyond reasonable doubt, rule that he had contravened those two laws, and that's why he was acquitted. Even if you believe all of those things, on a simple question of, did Julius Malema break all of these laws? The evidence is conclusive, and the answer is very, very clearly yes. So even if you then argue that this is 7 years old and it's a witch hunt and they're trying to take out someone, all of those things might still be true. But on a simple question of did he break these laws, the answer is yes. And so all of the obfuscation and confusion around that and trying to talk about other things doesn't mean that much when we really just talk about the bare facts of the case, which is, did he break these laws? And the problem that Malema now has is that breaking these laws has a mandatory minimum sentence of 15 years in jail. It's a very serious crime. A couple of weeks on the TV show, we had Edwin Cameron and Zahela Siraj-Pal on the show. They, with Rebecca Gore, have written an amazing book called Behind Prison Walls, about prison reform and where our prison system has gone wrong. And they particularly criticize mandatory minimum jail sentences because they say that it just overly punishes people and keeps people in jail beyond any sense of like usefulness and any evidence that keeping people in jail longer would keep society safer if you kept them in there longer. But that's the problem, is that there's a mandatory minimum sentence of 15 years. And so imagine Malema went to jail for 15 years. Then there's also the fact that if you get any conviction of longer than 12 months, so 1 year, any conviction, you then can't be a member of parliament for 5 years. That's very hectic. You may remember that we spoke about this when people were trying to figure out if Jacob Zuma could become an MP when he was running for national election 2024, because he'd been convicted of defying the constitutional court and those court orders and all of that stuff for a longer than 12-month sentence, even though he didn't serve the full 12 months or longer than 12 months. So that is something within our law, and it would be a devastating blow for Malema, even if he got a year and a day, right, of a conviction, because there is space with mandatory minimum sentencing where if there are circumstances that cause a judge to go, okay, there is this mandatory minimum sentence of 15 years, but because of the extenuating circumstances, we're going to make it lower. Firstly, the likelihood of it going from 15 years to less than 12 months is very small. Secondly, if it is longer than 12 months, he can't be an MP for 5 years. And thirdly, Malema's current crisis is there are no other significant face value leaders within the EFF. Dlozi is gone, Shivambu is gone. Nobody else has been nurtured and developed into a significant leader within the economic freedom fighters, able to step in, attract votes, and the rest. So this is potentially a massive crisis moment, not just for Malema in the case of him going to jail, but for the economic freedom fighters, a party that has already been backsliding, a party that has already had its bubble popped because it said that they were leaders in waiting based off of the fact that they were growing every single election and then they went backwards in the last one, based off the fact that they've been really struggling to recover any sense of momentum in the last little while, and they haven't been able to reestablish forward positive momentum for themselves. Now their basically only leader and all dominant leader really might be going to jail. However, one, pre-sentencing proceedings are only scheduled for the 23rd of January 2026. So at earliest, we will only find out what the judge has decided to actually give him, like what sentence to give him next year. Two, Malema is going to fight this all the way to the Constitutional Court. He's already said that he's going to call in arguably one of the best lawyers in South Africa, Tembeka Tobi, a man who virtually never loses, to fight his case. So this isn't a slam dunk. Malema's going to jail, although it would require an extraordinary turnaround and performance of legal reasoning all the way to the Constitutional Court to be able to somehow explain away the fact that although he very explicitly clearly broke these laws, he shouldn't face time for them. this case could drag on for years. It's already taken 7 years to get to this point. And so there may not be consequences very soon, but it is certainly, with this conviction, a massive, massive, massive moment for one of the most powerful people in South African, not just South African politics, but in South African life.
But also looking on the other side of the aisle, Max de Pree, the journalist, tweeted this yesterday, which I thought was really relevant. If Julius Malema gets a jail sentence, it would be a devastating blow for AfriForum Solidariteit's activism in the US. He's their bogeyman, quote-unquote proof that Afrikaners are viciously targeted, that he's untouchable. And I think that's really important because all of these right-wing people are, crowing and celebrating and stuff, but then where the rest, where rest is this quote-unquote proof for your quote-unquote theories.
Yeah, because if he goes to jail, then suddenly he's in jail. And then their argument that he's untouchable and been let go of, and mysteriously the courts are captured, and he should have received a hate speech conviction for, he did receive a hate speech conviction, but not for Kill the Boer, the song, will unravel very quickly. But like in all the madness of right now, this is a massive, massive thing. If you think about the fact that the ANC is in free fall, you think about the fact that respectfully Jacob Zuma is in his mid-80s. I don't know how much more runway he has to go as an active politician. And then you think about Malema potentially going to jail. That's 3 of the 4 biggest and most popular parties by a mile. And then who's the only party that seems to be fairly plain sailing? Right now, at least, the Democratic Alliance. Or are they? Because yesterday, actually no, on Tuesday, what day is it today? Thursday. So I think it was on Tuesday when the raid happened. According to the reporting of Velani Ludidi and Marvin Charles, a large-scale search and seizure operation is unfolding in Cape Town as the police's commercial crime investigations unit executes warrants related to alleged tender fraud totaling 1.6 billion rand. Now, before the DA people get touched, and the anti-DA people get touched. 1, yes, this is a massive potential scandal of tender fraud in the city of Cape Town, the place that the DA is held up as being this golden child, perfect example of how the DA will govern while wanting you to ignore how they tried to govern in Johannesburg and Nelson Mandela Bay and other places. And it is a potentially massive scandal. I will remind you, though, that anybody who truly believed that Cape Town was this blessed, perfectly run, crime-free place just doesn't know enough about Cape Town, which is one of the gang capitals of not just South Africa, but the world. And the construction mafia, it's all deeply embedded, and taxi industry. And Malusi Boy is under serious investigation in a criminal trial. He is a former DA MMC, like all deeply complicated. On the other hand, this is one massive potential scandal. And if you hold up one tender fraud scandal, and I'm not defending or saying this is okay. Remember, for those of you who are Twitter aggregators who might try and take this out of context, remember what I just said. On the other hand, by comparison to other places in South Africa, it is one terrible example versus a deluge of examples from other places. So now that I've said what both the DA people and the anti-DA people would want to say in this moment, let's talk about what exactly happened. So the early hours of Tuesday morning into Wednesday, law enforcement knocked on 26 addresses across Cape Town. Apparently, according to the police, the intervention followed information received from a whistleblower and subsequent preliminary investigations by the city of Cape Town and their authorities. Now, the city of Cape Town has tried to say that they were a part of this investigation and this expose because there was a whistleblower, and they are saying, the city of Cape Town is saying that they take a no tolerance approach to criminality, and so they were the ones who were a part of this. So it says, according to the reporting, city manager Lungelo Mbandazaya had reported the matter to the Hawks, which prompted the search and seizure operation. So the city of Cape Town, particularly the DA leadership of the city of Cape Town, are saying that we have this zero tolerance approach, and this is proving it, that we discovered this potential massive fraud and we are dealing with this. On the other hand, a lot of the opposition parties are saying that this is just an example of what we've been suspecting and trying to say the whole time. In fact, a direct quote from Brett Herron from the Good Party: while the Democratic Alliance frequently holds up Cape Town as a model of clean governance, the pattern of emerging scandals tells a different story. It points to systemic failures in oversight, accountability, and due diligence within the city of Cape Town. Now, that might be true. But again, this is a raid. And we are yet to find out the extent of everything that is involved here. And we are yet to find out the extent of the rot. And beyond that, even opposition leaders in Cape Town are saying, we don't actually know any more about this yet. We don't know what the fraud could potentially be about. We don't know who got raided. We don't know what it's connected to. And I hope we find that out very, very, very soon, because as we've seen with the Madlanga Commission, with the SIU announcements, with all the other investigations, we need evidence to show how politicians and political parties are potentially involved in this grand scale 1.6 billion rand tender fraud. And then let's go to the last big story of today. Jeff Wicks and Carl Cowan reporting there was a murder in a parking lot of a hospital in Johannesburg last night. It was at Netcare Mill Park Hospital. So you may know about Clutter and Thomas Murray. You may remember they were a father-son duo of liquidators, and they were working on some properties and some assets of some extremely powerful and allegedly potentially shady people, and they were murdered a little while ago. The person who was murdered last night was literally the prime suspect in that double murder, the name Bennett Benakoba Hermanus. Apparently, the police had them top of their list of suspects as the gunman in the assassinations of the Murrays more than 2.5 years ago. He has, it seems, been living in hiding, and he went to visit someone who was in hospital at Mill Park last night, and he was gunned down in the parking lot in what seems to be a hail of bullets. So that is extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary and terrifying. And although we don't yet know why he was gunned down, of course we don't, the reasonable instinct is that the Occam's razor, if you will, the most obvious explanation for now, which might be the right one, is that whoever was handling him, whoever paid him to do that stuff, whoever was also involved in the murders of the Murrays, were worried that he was going to rat on them, and so they wanted to take him out. So here it is, again from Carl Cowan and Jeff Wicks. News 24 has confirmed that the investigating officer on the Murray case had been tasked with tracing Hermanus with a view to possibly arresting him during a meeting with Major General Richard Shibiri on the 1st of September. Because whenever a main suspect in something like an assassination is arrested, there's the potential that that suspect will take a plea deal, a reduced sentence, the rest go into witness protection in exchange for information. Because ultimately, when you are doing a murder investigation, whoever the paid for hitman is not the most important person who you're trying to find out about. It's who paid the hitman. It's going up the chain to who are the malevolent forces who are who had those people killed for their own interests, unless, of course, it's the hitman operating solo for themselves. But the Murrays were not investigating Bennett Benakoba Hermanus, right? And so the fear from whoever was handling and paying Hermanus was, we need to silence this person forever because they have information that they could give to the police if they are about to be arrested. Again, mafia state. Again, massive, terrifying story. Again, the timing of this is terrifying, considering the fact that, as I said earlier, it's corruption exposure Christmas right now. Like, it is a generational moment in South Africa where so many different people are getting raided, like in Cape Town, are getting arrested, are being named and shamed in the Madlanga Commission and in other places. Natim Tetwa passing away in Paris. Like, it's an extraordinary and overwhelming moment. And it's very significant that one of the most high-profile murders in modern South Africa of people who were investigating potentially shady people, that the murderer was himself murdered in a parking lot in Johannesburg outside of a hospital last night. We need to hold all of these things at once somehow, while also having lives, being humans, letting our brains rest. It needs to happen all at the same time.